Yes, over to you.
Okay. So before beginning with the introduction, I've been asked to read a short poem to start this evening off from, of course, our poetry volume taken from all of the writings in the Lucifer collection, the Blavatsky Years. This is entitled Whisper of a Rose by Mora, published in 1888. Behold me, an offspring of darkness and light, with soft, tender petals of radiant white, with golden heart mystery full of perfume, that is soul of my breath, the secret of bloom. Infinity's center is heart of the rose, and the breath of creation, its perfume that flows through ages and aeons and time yet untold, but the soul of the breath I may not unfold. Welcome everyone today to the European School of Theosophy. We take this opportunity to thank the Blavatsky Trust for their continued support of our work. My name is Juliet Bates and I am part of the team of the school. The school was founded in 1981 by Geoffrey Farthing and other theosophists, and this year we will focus on the study of the secret doctrine. We will also be offering lectures, online courses, and seminars on a variety of topics. We suggest registering for our weekly newsletter so that you can keep updated on our program and not miss anything. The EUST is a not-for-profit organization, and the large majority of our programs are free of charge. So please support the work of the school by making a donation. Our online seminars, lectures, but not seminars, are also transmitted live on our YouTube channel, and you can register to our channel by visiting the link you see on the chat. The school is looking for a volunteer to help with our social media. We need someone who could give 2-3 hours a week to help. So if that is something you think you could do, please send an email to the school. This is a great way of giving service and is much needed. So thank you. We will have our monthly appointment with the Healing Circle, which is facilitated by myself on the 25th of April. So if you would like to participate or simply wish to include a name in our healing book, please send a message or an email to eustheosophy@gmail.com. Today, our Sunday lecture is by Jose Anacleto, entitled Absoluteness as Evidence and Denial of Limits and Attributes. Next Saturday, on the 17th of April, our 7-part seminar with Dr. Ravi Ravindra on the Bhagavad Gita concludes with the Yoga of Freedom by Renunciation, while next Sunday, we can look forward to Tom Bree, who will deliver his lecture on Dante's journey in Gothic cathedral design. Now, please take note also of a special Thursday event on the 22nd of April in honor of Earth Day with Mary Abdil. But remember to check our newsletter for all times and details. As you all know, the European School of Theosophy has undertaken the mammoth task of reprinting the entire contents of Lucifer magazine. Lucifer was a monthly journal founded in September 1887 by Helena Petrova Blavatsky, which ran until August of 1897, when its name was changed to the Theosophical Review. So this task involves compiling around 15,000 pages to be published under selected topics as the Lucifer collection, which will be divided into the Blavatsky years and the post-Blavatsky years. This is as large as the entire collected writings of Madame Blavatsky, edited by Boris Dzirkov. Now, following the first volume in the Lucifer collection, the Blavatsky Years, which is poetry, aphorisms, and proverbs, from which I read earlier, hot off the presses and weighing twice as much, is the second volume, The Last Song of the Swan, with the much anticipated editorials from 1887 to 1891, written by HPB for her Lucifer magazine. This is truly a unique volume of her writings and a must-have for your library that you can now order from Amazon. To introduce this volume to the world, you are all invited to a special Salon of Theosophy entitled Lucifer Unveiled, this Wednesday, 14th of April at 1900 GMT or 8 PM London time. Furthermore, the Lucifer Unveiled Salon of Theosophy event will continue on the succeeding Wednesdays to introduce The Blossom of the Fruit by Mabel Collins and the Talking Image of Urur volume by Franz Hartmann. Exciting stuff. I'll say no more, no spoilers. So check your newsletter for details, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Now, the way today's meeting will be conducted is, as you know, your microphones will be muted and you will not be able to unmute yourself. After the lecture, if you would like to ask a question, you can either write it on the chat or use the raise hand icon option. Your microphone will then be unmuted so that you can ask your question. If you need to leave the conference room during the lecture, please do so without announcing it on the chat so as not to disturb the proceedings. I would like to emphasize that the official language of the school is English, but today is an exception, as the question section following the lecture will require translation from English to Portuguese and vice versa. Therefore, we shall be opening for 3 short questions only. Thank you for listening. Now, it is my honor to introduce our speaker today, José Anacleto. José Manuel Anacleto has been a student of Theosophy since 1979. He is editor of Biosofia magazine and the president of the Centro Lusitano de Unificação Cultural, where 3 volumes of texts by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky have been created into the full Portuguese version and have been published for the first time in Portuguese there. Other books published include a re-edition of A.P. Sinnett's The Esoteric Buddhism, The Secret Books of Blavatsky by David Riegel and Nancy Riegel. And furthermore, José is the author of around 40 books, with special note to be given for Esotericism from A to Z, Alexandria and the Sacred Knowledge, the Ebionites and the Dual Mind from Slavery to Freedom, among others. He has also written the introduction for a Portuguese edition of The Voice of the Silence. José was commissioner and author of the 24 panels of the exhibition on Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, which took place in Lisbon in May 2018. The papers were later reproduced also in Brazil. The organizer and lecturer of several congresses, the author of hundreds of lectures and hundreds of articles on theosophy, esoteric philosophy, and spiritual traditions, we are extremely fortunate to have him here with us today. So, José, we are all looking forward to learning more about absoluteness as evidence and as denial of limits and attributes. So let me welcome you once again and pass the word over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet, by your kindness and for your nice words about me. And let me ask you if you are all seeing the screen. Is it all right?
We are seeing you.
I will share the screen now. Can you see now?
Yes, we can see the screen, the PowerPoint, yes.
Yes, okay. I will not use it a lot, but I think it's helpful. So, as Juliet already said, good afternoon, everyone, after all, before everything, good afternoon. As Juliet has said, the title of this lecture is Parabrahman, Absoluteness as Evidence and as Negation of Limitations and Attributes. First of all, I would like to start by apologizing for my poor pronunciation of the English language. And therefore, I thank you for your patience. I am used to speaking off the cuff, which I prefer, but in English, unfortunately, I have to read the script. Even so, I hope you will not end up assuming that I have created a new language completely incomprehensible except to myself. I'm very honored and joyful to participate in this school, founded by theosophists of such a great standing as Ian T. Askins, Adam Workup, and particularly Geoffrey Farding, with whom I had the pleasure of maintaining some correspondence in the last years of his life. This school, where many excellent theosophists have shared their studies and research. So I'm very grateful to Erica and to all of you for your kind invitation. The subject which I propose to address is especially related to the first proposition of the secret doctrine. This first proposition is the essential foundation of the colossal edifice of wisdom that is theosophical esotericism.
We cannot hear you. Please unmute yourself, Jose.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I will repeat the last sentence. The subject which I propose to address is specially related to the first proposition of the secret doctrine. This first proposition is the essential foundation of the colossal edifice of wisdom that is theosophical esotericism. If the three propositions masterfully synthesize the content of philosophy, science, and universal wisdom religion, which is theosophy, especially its cosmogenesis, I also believe that they unfold successively from one another. The second unfolds from the first, which is therefore the fundamental of all, and the third evolves from the first two propositions. I will talk a little more about this later on. I also think that these three propositions, and above all the first one, however subtle and metaphysical or even abstruse some may consider them to be, are self-evident, at least partially, and can offer themselves to our consciousness with a truly obvious clarity, as something that we can recognize for ourselves. So please allow me to give you a short story about my own experience. When I was a child, a very little child indeed, I had two experiences occurring systematically and that I still remember distinctly. First of all, the astonishment, the amazement at being, that is to say, the undeniable evidence that there is being, not a being, but being. Almost without realizing it, I was facing the most important, the most radical, the most profound of questions, the one to which all the others ultimately boil down. In fact, it is the same one that places us before the greatest, the most tremendous of mysteries, the mystery of being. Indeed, we can, and we must, doubt almost everything. We can question the validity of our convictions and the reliability of our senses and mind. We can wonder, and maybe with very good reasons, whether the things we see are not merely illusory or simple subjective creations. We can ask ourselves whether we are only characters in a thought or a dream of a being that encompasses us. We can even ponder the solipsistic conception according to which only the subject that is questioning himself exists. Still, there is one thing that evidently none of us can doubt. Something is. In other words, there is being. As asserted by Parmenides, although in a different context, being is, and it is not possible for non-being to be. Naturally, in my early youth, I could not rationally elaborate this systematic experience, nor draw from it all the implications. But I think that I was in fact before the overwhelming evidence of being, or rather beingness, as Elena Blavatsky masterfully wrote. Along with that, I felt the strangeness of the world, of people, of things being as they were. It all seemed to me like a fiction, a dream, a theater. What was considered normal, I saw as a mere possibility among countless other possibilities, and as something unreal, illusory. I was then too tender, almost too ethereal, seeming to hover in another sphere, to find this world normal. Once again, I repeat that at the time, none of this was something I rationalized or developed much. I can say it was purely living, but poorly thought. After so many years, I know I understand much more clear, at least I hope so, that any form of existence will always be strange in the sense of relative, of a mere conditionality among so many possible ones, of no more than a supposed reality that is always fleeting, changeable, and contingent. Elena Blavatsky expressed it wonderfully in The Secret Doctrine, in these clear and synthetic words. In volume 1, page 39, nothing is permanent except the one hidden absolute existence, which contains in itself the noumena of all realities. The existences belonging to every plane of being, up to the highest Diane Choans, are, in degree, of the nature of shadows cast by a magic lantern on a colorless screen. But all things are relatively real, for the cognizer is also reflection, and the things cognized are therefore as real to him and himself. And also, pages 295 and 6, everything is relative in this universe. Everything is an illusion. But the experience of any plane is an actuality for the percipient being, whose consciousness is on that same plane. Though the said experience, regarded from the purely metaphysical standpoint, may be conceived to have no objective reality. And again, volume 1, page 283, the universe is called, with everything in it, Maya, because all is temporary therein, from the ephemeral life of a firefly to that of the sun. Compared to the eternal immutability of the one and the changelessness of that principle, the universe, with its evanescent, ever-changing forms, must be necessarily, in the mind of a philosopher, no better than a will of the wisp. Yet, the universe is real enough to the conscious beings in it, which are as unreal as it is itself. Before dealing with the subject in more strictly theosophical terms, however, addressing the first proposition of the secret doctrine, let me briefly complete the description of my experience when I was very, very young. As time went by, I became more anchored in this world. I took it, or tried to take it, as more or less normal and real. In the more defined and conceptual interrogations that lately I posed to myself, from the age of 14, more or less, I tried to adapt the reminiscence of those experiences to the Christian religion in which I was brought up, and to make the being absolutely evident correspond to the God of Christians and of the mainstream religiosity. However, common Christian theology seemed to me rather insufficient and unfair. And I came to realize that a personal or even individual God with characteristics and attributes did not correspond to the absoluteness or limitlessness of being, beingness, to use again HPB's word, of which I had caught such a strong glimpse. No, it was not about God, and even less about a God, about one personal individual God, with all the misconceptions associated with it, and which in the famous letters 88 and 1990 from the Mahatmas to AP Synod are so unequivocally dismantled. Now, let us remember how HPB presented the first proposition of the secret doctrine, volume 1, page 14. Excuse me, my throat is a little sore. An omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought, in the words of Mandukya Upanishad, unthinkable and unspeakable. To render these ideas clear to the general reader, let him set out with the postulate that there is one absolute reality which antecedes all manifested conditioned being. This infinite and eternal cause dimly formulated in the unconscious and unknowable of current European philosophy, current 130 years ago, of course, is the rootless of all there was, is, or ever shall be. It is, of course, devoid of all attributes and is essentially without any relation to manifested finite being. It is beingness rather than being, in Sanskrit, sat, and is beyond all thought or speculation. In such a wonderful way, HPB fully clarifies the 2 points that I mentioned and that in my childhood I could only glimpse in a partial and unreflective way. First of all, it is being, not a personal being, I repeat. It is absolute being and life. It is absoluteness. It is reality and therefore one, indivisible, without beginning or end. In other words, eternal duration. Everything which is not one, everything which is composed, everything which has a beginning or an end, as we know, is fundamentally unreal from the point of view of theosophy. And though it is also non-being, because it is devoid of any attributes, which are always relativizing. Any particular way of being, any form of existence with certain specific relative conditions, and not others among the unlimitedly possible, is relative, as I said, and therefore strange in the sense I spoke of at the beginning, is unreal in the last instance. Even in the extant part of the original of the Manava Dharma Shastra, or laws of Manu, it was stated from, let me change, from that which is and therefore is not, from non-being, the eternal cause is born the being Purusha. It is, hence, not being anything in particular, anything condition, anything that our limited relative understanding can represent and define. And it is the eternal cause, but not the first cause, which already concerns manifestation and temporal relative existence. I hope to talk more extensively about this in a forthcoming lecture next 20th of June in this school, precisely under the title Parabrahman, Emptiness or Fullness, to be or not to be. In the title of both lectures, there is the word Parabrahman, one of those which, together with Sat, HPB used to introduce the first proposition, namely when she wrote, the Absolute, the Parabrahman of the Vedantins, or the one reality, Sat, which is, as Hegel says, both absolute being and non-being. The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 15. These are terms used in Hinduism, in the Sanatana Dharma. But, as we know, where one tries to designate with the word Parabrahman, or Brahman without attributes, i.e. Brahman Nirguna, can be alluded to by other terms used in different spiritual traditions. The Tao to which no name can be given, according to Lao Tzu. Zerwana Kern in Mazdaism, Ein Sof in the Kabbalah, the unknown God of the Greeks and of the famous speech of the Apostle Paul in the Areopagus of Athens. The abyss, the depth, the God who is not of different Gnostic schools, the unmanifested one of the great Neoplatonists from Plotinus to Proclus, the emptiness of the original Jonang school of Tibetan Buddhism, the bottomless abyss of Master Eckhart, the absolute one of Ibn Arabi and other Sufis, etc., etc. Excuse me. Now, as we have already mentioned at the beginning, we think and sustain that the questioning of everything is highly recommendable, as long as it is carried out with the intention of seeking the truth, the reality, with exemption and seriousness. As we all know, Theosophy does not appeal to any kind of blind faith, but to research, experience, intuitive understanding, and spiritual insight. Nevertheless, the most skeptical of individuals cannot at all deny everything. We just have to stop, to listen carefully, and the evidence of consciousness is there. Silently, immensely, and invincibly, grandiosely, it cries out its presence at that very moment of reflective and internal questioning. And with the evidence of consciousness is that of the inescapable reality that something necessarily is. This something that is, because its reality is effectively a present and undeniable evidence of consciousness and life, corresponds, after all, to the first proposition of the secret doctrine, which we complement herein, always quoting its renowned author. This beingness is symbolized under two aspects. On the one hand, absolute abstract space, representing bare subjectivity, the one thing which no human mind can either exclude from any conception or conceive of by itself. On the other, absolute abstract motion, representing unconditioned consciousness. Para Brahman, the one reality, the absolute, is the field of absolute consciousness, i.e., that essence which is out of all relation to conditioned existence, and of which conscious existence is a conditioned symbol. We can see that in pages 14 and 15 of the Secret Doctrine, Volume 1. If we may, we strongly encourage the realization of this experience of being consciousness. We will verify that it is so within ourselves. If diving into this reality consciousness is freed from egotistic conditioning, the Advaita Vedanta's assertion, both of various Upanishads and of the first Shankaracharya works, about the identity of Atman and Brahman, of being and consciousness understood as Supreme Self, of universal being and universal consciousness, will be beyond all doubts, like a touch of fullness. And here we are also coming across at least a portion of the secret doctrines third proposition, the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, the latter being itself an aspect of the unknown root. Volume 1, page 17. Deeply related to this is the experience of the fundamental unity of all existences, human and otherwise, which must echo in us the call of compassion. Let us also observe in this way that solemn and immense presence that we are able to experience within ourselves. If we pay close attention, it has a continuous movement, an unceasing breath that comes and goes, and that is obviously cyclical. This reminds us of at least one part, the most essential and archetypal of the remaining, the second fundamental proposition. The absolute universality of that law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, ebb and flow, which physical science has observed and recorded in all departments of nature. An alternation such as that of day and life and night, of day and night, life and death, sleeping and waking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal and without exception, that it is easy to comprehend that in it we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe. Again, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, page 17. It is wonderful to read HPB's words. Well, this way, we are certain that at least a substantial proportion of the synthesis of the whole theosophical teaching of the eternal wisdom can be proved by each and every one of us, provided we are capable of abstracting ourselves from the external noise and its most imprisoning impacts and conditioning. Of course, once the evidence of the basic pillars of the prodigious edifice of the occult wisdom has been confirmed, there is, however, a long work of tens, hundreds, thousands of years in many lives to understand it in its endless details, unfoldings, relations, implications, and points of view. Sometimes when we deal with cosmogony, some students ask, what is the point of such questions, so distant from our everyday experience? Shouldn't we focus on the practice? Well, it's a good question, but I think that theosophy is a theory practice of everything. It is an holistic system par excellence, which excludes nothing from its understanding. Everything is interconnected, everything is interdependent. As it is in the macrocosm, so it is in the microcosm. The laws that govern both are fundamentally the same. And everything in the macrocosm is represented in the microcosm. The human being is the synthetic reflection of all the powers operating in the great cosmos. Elena Blavatsky recommends us, for example, that we always make the analogy between the birth and development of a cosmos and those of a human being. We can verify this in several of our answers in the Secret Doctrine commentaries the unpublished 1889 instructions. For example, see pages 286, 438, 477, 574 and 5, etc. of the ISIS Foundation edition, on the basis of which the organization I direct, the Centro Lusitano de Unificação Cultural, Lusitanian Centre for Cultural Unification, published the Portuguese translation in a fraternal collaboration with Theosophists Brothers in Brazil, from the Theosophical Society of Aviar, and Netherlands, from the Theosophical Society of Point Loma. We can also find that analogy in HPB's esoteric instructions, see Blavatsky Collective Rights, volume 12. In Theosophy, study and practice go hand in hand. They really presuppose each other. It is no use having knowledge if it is not to help the other beings, if it is not to be used compassionately. At the same time, however, it is not enough to intend and to serve the general good for everything and for everyone if we do not know how to do this. Additionally, still, the study of the deeper questions lead us to awaken and exercise our higher principles of consciousness, so that Buddhi, the spiritual soul, as the vehicle of Atman, leads us and enlightens the mind, manas, so that we can have intuitive understanding. Therefore, such study is eminently practical. Similarly, spiritual practices tune our vehicles, purify us, and help us focus on levels of consciousness that will make the study more fruitful, lucid, and in-depth. Yes, theory or study and practice are totally complementary and are inextricably linked in Theosophy. To find within ourselves the reality of the great principles of the secret doctrine, as we saw before, is, in my opinion, extraordinarily important and constitutes an incomparable bliss. The recognition of the limitlessness of being and consciousness beyond any relative attributes bring us a sure and certain basis, a foundation of everything, which fills us with determination and demonstrates to us that there is an infinite sea of latent possibilities for us and for everyone. More important, it allows us to see the unity of all life and its natural consequence, which is compassion, the law of laws, eternal harmony, alias self, a shoreless universal essence, the light of everlasting right and fitness of all things, the law of love eternal, in the wonderful words of the voice of the silence. Absoluteness is, of course, beyond all our relativity. But at the same time, it is in absoluteness that we live and move and have our being, to use the expression of the Apostle Paul in the above-mentioned speech in Athens. This is an homage to Eric. The one life, wrote one of the Mahatmas, penetrates, nay, is the essence of every atom of matter. Letter 10 to the Mahatma's letters to APCnet. In each of us, Parabrahman corresponds to Atman, or perhaps Paramatman, as we shall see in the next lecture. It hovers beyond our usual field of consciousness. However, through its Upadhi Buddhi, we can understand and experience its presence, which is that of pure unity, of love and compassion, beyond all egoisms and separatisms, beyond the great heresy of spiritness spoken of in The Voice of Silence, another jewel we owe to Helena Blavatsky. What could be more practical and relevant than this? There is a time for everything, as we can read in the 3rd chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes, more or less like that, Ecclesiastes, which is in correspondence with the 2nd proposition of the secret doctrine. Each time we are affected by tiredness or maybe some discouragement, when we lose our inspiration, we can always go back to our innermost being, to that non-dual witness of consciousness, which is Atman, although veiled by Buddhi Banas, so that after this ebb, we can flow again with the force of the one life. We consider Parabrahman to be a very special suggestive term to allude to the absoluteness, the limitlessness, the transcendence of all relativities. In fact, the Sanskrit word para conveys the idea of infinite, absolute, supreme, ultimate, last limit, highest, superior, previous, and subsequent. In general, that which is beyond. The somewhat frequent recurrence to words with this prefix para is justified in theosophical studies by the unavoidable necessity of referring to something which can be absolutely and radically so, something which can be independent of any conditioning, of any relativity, something which is permanent, therefore real, as opposed to the impermanence, therefore unreality, of contingent things, of things which acquire new properties and whose others previously manifested. Something which is not involved in phenomenal succession, something which is not caused and dependent, something which is the foundation and substratum of existence. Something that is beingness beyond maybe, something that is infinite and eternal in the face of ontological, spatial, and temporal limitation. Something that is the cause of itself behind the flux of things caused or create or even radiated, to use HPB expression. Something that, after everything that is objective, manifested, concrete, individual, and specific in this universe, has vanished, subsists as pure unity, as the whole being in the eternal duration, as what always was, is, and will be. Something, finally, that is fullness of being and absence of particular attributes. The notion of superiority that the prefix para expresses can be found not only in words I have already mentioned, like Parabrahman and Paramatma, but also, among many others, in Parapurusha or Parinirvana, for example. However, besides Nirvana and Parapurusha or Parinirvana, however, besides Nirvana and Parinirvana, there is Maha Parinirvana. And in the Mahatma letters to AP Synod, reference is made to Parabrahman, which also appears in the Secret Doctrine commentaries. Therefore, even if we are far from reaching these evolutionary heights, let us never be conformed with what we have already achieved. Let us always try to reach further, to deeper and more universal levels of being and consciousness, not for a selfish motivation, but driven by compassion for all humanity and for all beings. And so, I end by quoting one of the three absolute truths from the idol of the white lotus, passed on to Mabel Collins. The soul of man is immortal, and its future is the future of a thing whose growth and splendor has no limit. Thank you.